Okay, hello friends. This is AMAZE Live. I'm Kristen Coe, the host of this live broadcast on the AMAZE Parents page. And I'm so delighted to have Brittany McBride and Brooke, our AMAZE Youth Ambassador, on the line. Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
I would love it if you could both give a little intro to yourself on the broadcast today.
I'll go first. My name's Brittany McBride. I'm the Associate Director of Sex Education at Advocates for Youth. And I have been at Advocates for over 4 years, but working in sex ed for almost 11. Excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Brooke, and I'm a youth ambassador for AMAZE, and I've only been doing that for like 8 months, I think. And I'm also very excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so we are, this is Facebook Live. This is all happening in real time. So I'll say we're having a little bit of an audio snag. So I'm just going to ask, hey, Brooke, when you're not talking, can you try muting? And we'll see if that fixes our feedback issue.
Sure.
Okay. Yes. Okay. See, we're solving problems on the go. This is amazing. Okay. So I'm going to start out. Yes. So we're talking about Sex Ed for All. This is the month. It's May. We're here for it. And so, Brittany, I'm going to start with you with a question. This month's theme, or this year's Sex Ed for All theme, is equity and access for all. I mean, obviously super important, but can you share why this is such a pressing need at this particular moment in time?
Absolutely. And it's a really great question. I'm very excited that that's been our focus for Sex Ed for All month. Sex Ed month is all year long for us. And in order for sex ed to be really great, we want it to be complete. And we love to use these really great terms of medically accurate, age appropriate, inclusive, and trauma informed. And all of those words are really great, but sometimes we don't know what that means. But we want to make sure that the sex ed we provide to our young people is complete, that they're getting all of the information that they need and the ability to access the skills and the services in order to actually utilize the information that we're teaching them. What we realize, though, and what we've known for quite some time, is we haven't always done the best of job to reach the people who need the help the most. So for me in particular, working in Black and Brown communities, working within my own community is incredibly important, because so often there are times where no sex ed is provided, and it is impacting the Black and Brown communities, our LGBTQ communities, in a higher number. And therefore, they're seeing a lot more negative health outcomes than other communities are. And so it's really important that we go above and beyond to ensure that they are receiving all of the information plus additional support, so that they're just given the same equal footing, so that they are also able to make the decisions about their lives so that they can live the lives that they want to live. And so we want to be affirming of our LGBT young people. We want to make sure that our classroom spaces and our teachers are capable and able to provide those spaces where our young people are getting that information they need. And we want it to be reflective of what's happening within their communities and actually addressing all of the issues that our young people are facing.
Wonderful. And before I have a question, I'm going to flip to both you and Brooke in just a sec, but I just want to tag on another question for you, Brittany. Obviously, tech equity is a huge issue during the pandemic, but on the other hand, do you feel like your job has been made a little bit easier as people have kind of in this past year been forced to figure out tech and try to find solutions? Have you found outreach and the ability to connect with people easier over the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like at the very beginning of the pandemic, the tech issue was something that everyone kind of recognized and jumped into action. And so we were hearing of school districts getting MacBooks, computers, laptops, tablets. They were getting them out to people very quickly. The issue then came into access to Wi-Fi and internet that was suitable for young people to be able to access their classes. And it felt like folks were really responsive to those needs and were able to get them that stuff. So that was really wonderful. I think that the exhaustion, which is understandable, we have been through it this last year, has made it really tough for some schools to continue to prioritize sex education right now when they're struggling to figure out how to provide math and science in those core classes. it can sometimes be a little bit easy for folks to decide, you know what, we're exhausted. We're just trying to make sure that they get their core classes for testing and for them to be able to continue on to the next grade. We'll take a pause on sex ed. But people have been really responsive because we're really pushing that this is when kids need sex ed now more than ever. They're home. They have access now to this really great technology. We've given them tablets and all of these MacBooks. And now they have a lot of uninterrupted time with not a lot of adult supervision. So it's a perfect time to make sure that we're providing sex ed, that we're talking about internet safety, that we're making sure that they understand what a reliable resource is before we just give them access to all of this internet. So it's been great to see school districts rise to the cause and continue to push themselves to make sure that kids are getting the sex ed they need.
Amazing. Now, you may have sort of answered my next question, which I'll flip to both you, Brooke and Brittany. And Brooke, don't forget to come off mute when when you're ready to answer. But my general question to both of you, both from a teen perspective and an education perspective, is what is like a concrete way or overarching way that you feel that sex ed can be more reflective of all students? Like why, how can we be more inclusive at a basic level? Brooke, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think inclusive sex ed should be integrated to all sex ed and not just be a separate class. And I don't think students should have to disclose their sexuality in order to get information that should already be taught. And regardless if you're straight or cisgender and identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus community, that information is valuable to everyone. And there's a lot of information around the internet that is very false, but schools don't touch on it because the traditional sex ed is more focused towards straight cisgender people waiting until marriage. But in 2021, that's not really the reality.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brooke. And a lot of the times when I go in to do teacher trainings, which is where I spend a lot of my time, a lot of folks don't even know what it means to be inclusive, and especially in regards to sex education. So sometimes it's about taking a step back and making sure that we understand the terminology. And so I love to tell this quick little story of what it means to be inclusive and really motivating and challenging teachers to, even if it's not the requirement for your district, to move along from being inclusive to being affirming. So if I were to invite Christine and Brooke over for dinner, or if I invited Christine over for dinner and Brooke, you heard about it through the grapevine, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess you can come now because you heard of it. That's me being tolerant. You heard about it. I'm letting you come now because it's kind of uncomfortable. If I'm inclusive, I invited both of you at the exact same time to the same dinner party. You both got an invitation. I want teachers to move towards being affirming. I want to check in with both of you before I even schedule a dinner party. Does next Thursday work for you? Do either of you have any food allergies? Is there something that I should be aware of that you may not eat? I want you to feel safe in my home. I want you to see that I went to great lengths to make sure that I made sure that you had what you needed in my home while you were there. And that's what we want for sex education. And it's not just about the curriculum, because we have really fantastic curricula that are affirming of LGBT young people. It's about the delivery of it too, because I can give you the materials, but if the delivery of that is not as affirming, or if you don't understand the rationale as to why and are committed to doing that, it really does make an impact on a young person's perceptions of if they're wanted in that class and if their needs are going to be met, if they're important to that teacher and in that classroom space.
Okay, one of the reasons I love doing these lives so much is I feel like I always learn something incredible from my guests. And I know, Brittany, you work with Nora Gelperin, who is sort of one of my sex ed heroes, but I had never heard that specific framing and a type of example language around inclusive versus affirming. And I feel, even though I know what affirming means, and so I feel like that is super, super valuable for people to hear and, a concrete way to understand it. So thank you for that. That's awesome. I also forgot, I can't believe I forgot to mention this at the top of the show, but please, if you're joining us now live, I see people on, or later, a lot of people come to the broadcast later, please drop questions and comments, emojis, whatever, GIFs, for Brittany and Brooke in the comments. They are here and they're awesome, and they're ready to answer questions if you've got them. So please, or just a hello is fine. Brooke, I want to switch to you, and oh, and here we go. Ask and you shall receive. Bethany says, 100% love your example, Brittany, about inviting friends over for a dinner party to explain inclusive versus tolerance. Thank you, Bethany. Dinner parties. Let's think about it. That's going to be an exciting time. Okay, so Brooke, I wanted to switch over and ask you a question. You know, obviously, one of the most valuable things about the AMAZE Youth Ambassador Program is just really connecting with teens, knowing exactly, like, we think we know what's going on and what your questions are, but your insight is just so continually invaluable. So I'm just curious, what are you hearing from peers, you know, in a confidential way? Just what are the biggest concerns and barriers around inclusive sex ed?
I think I mentioned it before, but a lot of my friends will go to, and like peers will go to like the internet to like find answers to their questions, and there's obviously like a lot of misinformation on the internet, which the misinformation kind of leads to STDs and unwanted pregnancies and like all of that stuff, which could be prevented with inclusive sex ed. So yeah, definitely the internet, and also like around school, people will just make up stuff and then they'll believe that, and yeah.
Do you feel like is it platform based? I mean, do you feel like a lot of teens are getting their information from, you know, a social platform like TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or are they actually just kind of Googling around and looking for things?
I would say it's a mixture, but definitely, yeah, like you mentioned TikTok, there's misinformation on there. A Wikipedia, people get their information from Wikipedia, which isn't very reliable. Yeah, so I would say it's a mixture of different platforms, but also just Googling around.
Mm-hmm. Also, Brooke, I wanted to share some ups for you. Love your point about always including queer sexual health, whether or not we know they're in the room. So thank you for that. Brittany, I'm curious, you know, what do you think are some of the best ways that parents and caregivers can step up to advocate for equitable, inclusive sex ed? I think there's a lot. This question is always on my mind because I feel like a lot of parents don't even really know what's going on in health classes, but then also don't really know how to stand up and figure out what the next step is to advocate for something better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have so much power, y'all, as parents. I mean, schools will move mountains for you all. So that's usually where we go when we need support. We will find the parents and the caregivers, because there is nothing scarier to a school than a parent knocking on the door to ask some questions because they don't know what's going to happen. So what I encourage parents to do is, one, give yourself some grace. I'm a parent to 2 small children myself. We're all trying to figure this out. We're not going to always know all of the answers. So give yourself some grace, first and foremost. Secondly, try to get as informed as you can. Online, you should be able to find whether your school district even has a policy in place that requires sex ed to be taught. All of those details will be found online on your website. So just get educated as much as you can about what's happening in your school. Go to the school, ask to see the curriculum, tell them you want to read through it. I did this at my daughter's school, and they were terrified, and I just wanted to make sure that it was inclusive. I was all for it. I'm like, yeah, please, I'd love all of the extra support. So go and really research, see what your school district requires through like the laws and the expectations around what will be taught, what shouldn't be taught. Find out what's happening within your own school, and then figure out where are those opportunities for growth, and then advocate for them. A group of parents, a group of caregivers, a group of well-intentioned like community members are going to make change. You all have so much power, and ultimately, it's about just finding a nice footing or an opportunity to agree upon something. And we all care about our kids. We all care about the young people in schools. There's not one adult who works with young people, who works in a school setting, who would ever argue with me about that they don't care about the well-being of young people. And ultimately, it's our responsibility as the adults in this situation to make sure that our young people are getting the information that they have a right to, so that they don't have to go to Wikipedia, or that is their only opportunity to get some credible or any sort of information, quite honestly. So do your research, find out, ask questions, make friends, go to the school, ask to see the curriculum, read through it. And if it's really great, give them their kudos, tell them what a wonderful job they're doing. And if there's opportunities for growth, we have things available to you all. And if your school doesn't have the opportunity to provide better sex education, you as a parent can do quite a bit at home. The AMAZE videos are fantastic to sit down and watch with your kids. It's a great opportunity for you to kind of get a refresher for sometimes getting brand new information for us on this stuff, so that you can even have those conversations. And it could just be a great opening point to making yourself an askable adult within your home.
Brittany, you said we have resources. What would be a good landing page to direct parents who want to figure out, what the next steps are for, what questions they should be asking or what they should advocate for?
Yeah, absolutely. So Advocates for Youth, we have a completely free kindergarten through 12th grade sex education curriculum called the 3 R's: rights, respect, responsibility. You can find it online at the number 3, the letter rs.org. And anyone can log on. I joke about it because my daughter's school doesn't teach sex ed. So I'm like, I homeschool that part of it. And you can use the curriculum yourself. And then, of course, amaze.org has all of these fantastic videos where you can then create those playlists and watch those with your children.
Wonderful. I have another question I'm going to throw at you guys, but a comment from Tracy. Love that advice, Brittany. Many times teachers are so used to parents being naysayers, so it can be really affirming and motivating to hear from parents who are more supportive and willing to be advocates. On that note, I actually wanted to both you, Brittany and Brooke, just toss out a parallel. So one of the things, I'm a mom of a 10 and 16-year-old, and certainly when kids stand up and use their voice, that is incredibly powerful, and people want to make change. And I recognize it can be a little scary or nerve-wracking to be the person who kind of like steps into the ring to do that. So I guess I'm curious, both from a parent educator perspective and then Brooke also from a teen perspective, like what would be a good way to encourage people to step up and use their voice as a tween or a teen who wants honest, inclusive, comprehensive information? What do you recommend for that? I mean, Brooke, I don't know if it's a matter of like kind of finding a buddy who also believes the same things you do. So I'd be curious on your perspective from both of you.
I'll let you go, Brooke. I'm curious.
So I think there's definitely, when you're like standing up and you're like speaking out, there's definitely the fear of not getting taken seriously as a young person. And then also kind of, it's like putting yourself out there in a way. And like you could get judged by the faculty or peers. Yeah. But I think what you said about finding a buddy, that will be helpful, because I think not a lot of people would want to do it themselves. So it's like nice to have the support of someone else.
Absolutely. And I always look to the solution for the adults in the equation. And so I think it starts with the caregivers and the families at home. And we have to be able to walk the talk and actually respect our young people's ability to make decisions for their own body. Even if it's something that you don't feel comfortable with yourself, it's really not your choice to make. A good example of this is my oldest is in a sport. She was invited to stay for extra time if she wanted to like do some extra practice, and she opted out. And a lot of people were like, well, why don't you just make her stay? And it was her choice. It was her body. She gets to make those decisions about when she wants to do something with her body. And it's not me to make that decision, even if it might inconvenience me, or I could have had an extra 30 minutes to get some more work done. Ultimately, it was an ability for me to follow through and show that I was going to support her when she made those decisions around what happened to and with her body, and that she has the autonomy to make those decisions. And I think when we start that from a very young age with our young people, it sets them up for success. It sets them up for these expectations around having other people respect their choices around their bodies. And it also gives us the ability to start practicing and then demonstrating for people when we get the no that we don't want, because so often we talk about looking for the yes and the responsibility being on the person getting the ask. But we need to also teach ourselves and our young people what it's like to get an answer that you weren't looking for, and the disappointment and the decision, the ability to then rebound from that and do so in a way that isn't harassing or bothering the person that you wanted to get the yes from. So I think it's about starting at a really young age. And it's, even if you haven't done that so far, you can start. If they don't want to give a hug to their uncle or their aunt when they come over, you don't have to. And I'm going to back you up on that. Even if, you know, down here, I live in New Orleans, like that's what we do when we see each other. So I'm going to back you up on that. You get to make those decisions about your body. And then ultimately it will shift the paradigm of our culture around respecting people's ability to make decisions around their body, no matter what age they are.
I am a member of Team Optional Hug for Kids, and and I will say I think that is one of my very, very favorite examples, because it shows, I think it takes the fear about talking about bodies and sex ed, you know, the immediate sort of reaction that parents have about that. When you say talk to kids early, it doesn't have to be about sex itself. This is just about, you know, having bodily autonomy, and that's so, so important. So I'm curious, and I didn't really prep you guys for this, but I'm a very action-oriented person. And so in the context of Sex Ed for All Month and, you know, being inclusive and being equitable, I would love to close out this broadcast with each of you sharing one sort of like action you would recommend for whether it's for adults or for youth, you know, something tangible that people could do, whether it's a favorite resource, a conversation topic, maybe to try to have with somebody. I'm curious about what's top of mind for you right now as we move through this month.
I think that kind of going off what Brittany said about the not having to go give hugs, teaching your kids consent at a young age. And I know AMAZE has a lot of videos about that. And also what you, Christine, said about that, consent at a young age. And then also that sex ed when you're young doesn't have to be specifically about sex, but it can be like about consent or like your body and how it's your choice. So, yeah.
And for me, one actionable step I can give folks is to take a step back and question yourself. Those of you who work with young people, those of you who love your young people, take a step back and question yourself and really start to unpack some of these implicit biases that we all carry as we do this work. And as we think of equity, really putting yourself in that vulnerable position, putting yourself in that uncomfortable position to recognize that sometimes you are making decisions around young people that can make lasting impacts around their relationship with their own body, with their sexuality, with their love of school. It is so important to take a step back and really assess where there are opportunities for us as the adults in the situation to identify where we have opportunities for growth. And I see it often. I see that there are far more Black and brown kids who are labeled as bad kids. They are suspended from school. They are labeled as fast and they want to have sex. And it's always a negative connotation sometimes, and oftentimes missing really big gaping opportunities to be that trusted adult, to be that person who could be supportive to a kid who needs it so desperately. So taking a step back, and while we are all, I'm sure, doing really great work, there are times where we could be doing so much better. So giving ourselves those accolades, but also recognizing those opportunities for growth.
I think that's wonderful from both of you. And, you know, Brittany, what you just said really makes me think of something you talked about at the top of this show, which was to have a moment of grace for yourself. I think what we are all experiencing on a number of levels, not just related to sex ed and equity, is a lot of unlearning and, you know, unwinding the things that we did or did not get education-wise as we were growing up. So I think there's a lot of important work to be done. Also, Brooke, you just have a couple fans. Nadine says, great input, good suggestions for action items. Love it. So anyway, I am so grateful to you both for joining me. I know we're all juggling school and children, and there's an animal behind me that's been laying peacefully. So I'm so grateful for you guys for coming on the broadcast today. If you're coming to this broadcast later, which I know a lot of people do, please drop questions or comments you might have in the comments field below, and I will try to get those answered. And we'll also be sharing content here and on Instagram at AMAZE Parents and Twitter, AMAZE.org, more Sex Ed for All content. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Brittany, Brooke, this was such a delight, and I'm so grateful you took the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for having me also.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.